Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see you all here and those who are online. My name is Mike Schachter, and I'm the president of the Carolina Nature Coalition. And I would like to thank Public Radio East for publicizing, also definitely the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of New Bern for providing this venue here, great venue, where we can do both in person and Zoom. I want to thank Tom Shoup for our secretary, but also our technical person. We couldn't do it without him. And I want to thank Connie Casey, who's our information director, and also our brownie baker. So those of you who are online, I'm sorry you can't have the brownies, but maybe you'll come in person next time. I also want to remind everybody that we are truly a volunteer organization, and we only receive funds from donations. We have no grants from large corporations or small corporations. So if you are interested in what we do, please, there's a donation bucket over by the food. You can go back and get some food later and donate. And for those who are online, or if you don't have your wallet handy here, there's a donation button on our website. So you can go to carolinanaturecoalition.org and donate. I want to tell you right now that we are planning future events. And next month, we're planning a tour of the NOAA weather station in Newport. And also, in the future, we're going to have a person from there speak on hurricanes and superstorms. So this is our plans, some of our plans for the future. Right now, I'd like to introduce our presenter. Our presenter for tonight is Avery Smith. He is the Stormwater Administrative Supervisor for the City of New Bern. Avery is a Marine Corps veteran, as you can tell, who has been employed by the City of New Bern for 16 years. 12 of those years he's been working in the stormwater field. His main duties consist of management of the city's drainage system, ensuring that the city's stormwater discharge is clean and free of pollution, and in managing water quality and drainage improvement projects. A few years ago now, Avery has gave the Carolina Nature Coalition group a tour of the Jack Smith Creek Stormwater Project. It was a great thing. Avery is also my up-the-road county neighbor. We thought about this because I actually read the newspaper sometime, the Sun Journal, and there was an article which said that the City of New Bern received $4 million for stormwater infrastructure. And I said, well, let's hear about it. So without further ado, Avery Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. How's everybody this evening? I hope you're good. Hey, I'm going to do a little test right quick because if I move around, I like the motion to move. I want to be able that the microphone can at least hear me. I'm sorry for the people online if I move out of the camera up front. So I do like to move around. I think that makes it a little bit easier to, break the ice and not be so nervous, because I am nervous. I don't like to be up in front of people, but who does? So, all right. So we're gonna throw a slide up here, and he can go back and forth. The slide's more or less to remind me of where what I want to talk about. So if he takes it off, then don't worry about it. I'm gonna get to it anyway. Oh, okay. So my subject is going back to green, and what I mean by that is we are the City of New Bern in partnership with FEMA, granting agencies, everybody. We are taking these funds and doing a project to bring green infrastructure back into a neighborhood where we're not using the properties for anything right now. Right now, it's just a bunch of lots that we cut the grass on all the time, and they're not really serving a specific purpose. So I'm gonna do my slide here. See here, there we go. That introduction, he did a perfect job. It's pretty much the same thing he said. So I don't think there's anything different on there. Maybe the way I worded a couple things, and I think I wrote that introduction. But anyway, all right. So why the Duffyfield community? Well, people who live there and people who've been there, it's a K Street area, Biddle Street area. We have a bunch of land that we acquired from FEMA. FEMA gave it to us after several different storms. We acquire a lot here, acquire a lot there, and some of it even is, which I didn't put in my slide, is came from tax acquisition. So if someone didn't pay the taxes, or if it's an heir that didn't know that they owned the property and it sat there for years, the city would absorb that eventually because of unpaid taxes. So we had, I didn't write it down, sorry. It's about 12 acres of land, give or take, in this area here. I'm sorry, I keep looking at that slide. Sorry, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. You see that this shows the outline of what is the area. We are the main area for the project. So that includes the area where we already have an existing pond. I don't know if anybody's been down on Biddle Street in a while. And we actually have been vigilantly working on this pond. That is the main focus of this whole project, because if the pond doesn't do what it's supposed to do, the rest of the wetlands and all that other stuff that we have proposed for the area won't work. So I can't remember what my slide said. I'm sorry. All right, so this borders the North Carolina Railroad corridor, which it follows it on it's actually on the southern side, but it's like the northwest part of the neighborhood. We built the first pond a while ago, so it's been a work in progress. I'll get more into that in a minute, but I'm gonna have to put sorry about this. Put my laptop where I can see. I'm blinder than you would believe. So FEMA places restrictions on land that they give to municipalities. One of the main things is that we cannot build a structure on it at all. No structures, nothing that could be an asset that would be somewhere down the line we would claim under another FEMA, under another situation, a flood or a hurricane. We can't use it that way. So we could use it to make parks or green space, or I think we can donate it to somebody else. I'm not sure about that one, that would do the exact same thing, but no structures. So that made this area prime, because also about this area, it's the lowest point in our neighborhood, in the Duffyfield community. So if you live from Main to F Street, those areas, K Street, all that water runs down to those points right there, and it's primed to catch and treat stormwater. So there, 2020, when the American Rescue Plan came into action, a lot of grant money and funding came available. So we took that opportunity to improve the aesthetics, plus the pumping and the stormwater in that part of Duffyfield, and in turn will help a lot of other parts of the upperland parts of the neighborhood. So what's the plan? How do we make this work? You're probably thinking, hey, look, how you gonna make this work in this neighborhood? So first thing we did, the very first thing was phase one of the project. Phase one was expanding the pond. If anybody has been to Duffyfield in the last 10 years or so, you remember it used to have a really little pond. 10 to 12 years ago, it had a little, the very first pond was I wouldn't say, it wasn't even a quarter acre big, and it had a little pump in it, and it would flood. If a thunderstorm came in that area, it would flood. So that's where when I adopted the neighborhood, that's where I got it for the first part. So this will be the third expansion of this pond. It started off as a really small part. If you look at the picture in the photo, if you see that small corner that's up near the railroad tracks in the green, that was actually the pond, the original pond. It was very small. So we expanded it to the green area back in 2014, which made it I don't know. I got my slides mixed up. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to keep up with myself. Forgive me. So let me slow down. So now the pond is an acre. It's 1 acre pond with a pump station. The pump station runs into a 2,200 foot force main, which takes the water down the train tracks and discharges it directly into Jack Smith Creek instead of into ditch along the railroad, which is bordered by a bunch of people's houses. People's homes would often, during heavy rains, we had pumps running down this ditch. It would actually push water in places that didn't have any water in it at all. So after input from people and input from myself, we realized that it wasn't a good idea to continue to put water on the other side of the train tracks at that point, because it used to just shoot from the pond straight across the train tracks and exit out behind, I don't know, C Street. You know what C Street is? If you go down to the end of C Street, it was right there to discharge, and it would run down the ditch. So people, National Court, and things of that nature down that way, they would fall victim to water that came down that side of the train track. So that's another reason why we added this force main. So it's 2,200 feet, and I'll get to that later about why. Another hurdle that came from that long force main. So the nature part of this whole deal is the meandering wetlands. So from the pond, I'm hoping that everybody knows the neighborhood. From the pond, if you look at this photo here, everything else will be a deep pool wetlands. So it'll have pools, deep pools, meandering creek beds, plants, and then it'll drop off into the pond afterwards. But that meandering wetlands will start at on Bloomfield, and work its way down into K, into those areas. So all its green space now will be what it was probably 100 years ago. It'll turn back, and we're actually turning it back into a wetlands. But it'll be a wetlands that people can use as a amenity in its final form. So it'll be trails and things of that nature, plants, stuff to look at, probably some animals out there. I don't really know how many animals are going to come over there because of the urbanized area around it. But you'll definitely get plants that we planted, plus some native plants that will introduce themselves, because I learned that from Jack Smith Creek wetlands. You can plant whatever you want, but whatever the nature is around that area, it's going to introduce itself into that. And I'll leave that at that. You figured out if you've been there lately, because we got a big problem with Phragmites, which we're trying to alleviate. So we'll see how that turns out. It'll be the fourth phase of it, which is a proposed or optional phase right now, will actually have like gazebos and park benches, things of that nature, to as amenities for people to come out and have a good time and sit out and enjoy nature. So
on what street?
So it'll be, the main part of it will be down, not Bloomfield, I'm sorry, Pavey, then K Street. So it'll come, where Pavey intersects with K Street and F right there. So that'll come down in the parts that are they technically already a wetlands behind. It's a uninhabited city-owned area behind it that we're going to just actually open up and make sure that it flows well and take it down and make sure it's conducive down to our pond with our pump station in it. So, yeah, it's going to be a bigger garden now. It's going to be a wetlands garden. But it's not going to be totally like wet. I'm pretty sure K Street, if you look at it, it's going to have a meandering area with a few deep pools, but you'll have plenty of place for vegetation, things of that nature. And I'm not sure right at this point, but if y'all want to get involved, volunteer, do something, there's probably going to be some opportunity to do so once we start really maintaining it, plants, things of that nature. It's trash because I mean, you're gonna have wind-driven trash to get in there, and just stuff that if you're in the interested in keeping it pretty, there's a volunteer option. So some of the plants you'll see out there will be prickler weed, which I know everybody's seen prickler weed. It's everywhere. It's kind of got an arrow-shaped leaf with a pretty purple flower. And the benefit of those are they bring in dragonflies, and everybody knows dragonflies hate mosquitoes. So, or they don't. They love mosquitoes. They eat them. So that's a good thing. And you get like hibiscus. That's a beautiful plant. Everybody loves hibiscus, and duck potato. Arrowhead is another good one. Some of these plants are more beneficial to nitrogen and phosphorus reduction. So as that water passes through their root systems and around their leaves, plants love that nitrogen, that phosphorus. They suck it up. So in turn, that's where our what's some water quality aspect of the whole situation comes from. And water just moving along in a slow, steady pace is also good for sediment removal, which is the number one pollutant on planet Earth. It's in everything. Every time it rains, you washing dirt and sediment into our rivers. So that's like number one pollutant. So that's another good option with us having the meandering wetlands and the deep pools. They'll give settlement for dirt and debris. So let's go to the next slide. So all right, so when the wetlands, the end of the journey is the pond, incorporated with a pump station and a fountain. So amenities wise, it'll have a nice fountain. The fountain has two purposes. One is looks, aesthetics, but then also it creates turbulence in the water that keeps your plants not your plants, your invasives from settling in. So you got, you ever seen the green hair like algae that grows and everything around here? When you keep that water moving, that helps get rid of that duckweed, stuff of those natures, the stuff that looks bad. It's actually a plant, but it looks bad. It's just terrible looking. Hopefully keeping that water moving and turbulent, that'll keep a lot of those plants out of our pond. The number one thing I want y'all to leave with is the train track itself. The stuff that they transport is actually the dust and the pollutants that come off of the train is phosphorus. It comes from PCS, places like that. And it's inherent. You can't help it. But it's the way it is. So we have to try to fight it as best as we can. So it's introduced through runoff through the tracks, and it goes right in our pond. And if you don't do anything about it, you get green water. And I know everybody's seen that pond. That pond's been green for years, and I fought it and put spray in it and chemicals, and it won't do it. We're going to try our best to keep it excited, keep it from turning green. It's not a bad green, but it don't look good. I just don't like it. So we go with that. So at the end of this project, we're going to remove all the asphalt from any place does not access private property. I don't have a picture of it up here, but if you think about it, the wetlands is going to be in places where there is crossing the road doing that. So if somebody for private property does not need access, we're going to take those roads out completely. So in that form, we're actually we're taking away some impervious surface and actually returning it back more nature-based, nature-ish, as natural as man can make it. So, it's going to be green, and we'll have grass and trees, and we got a lot of different species of trees that we have picked, like water oaks and ball cypress, things of that nature that we're going to. So you might see during the project, you might see one tree leave, but we're going to plant 3 or 4 more in this place. Just more water-based things that drink a lot of water, pull in a lot of nutrients, and will reduce a lot of the impact on the water that we discharge. So when we get to that point, we get to the pumps. So this is the most important part, because without this wouldn't work. So we went from, I'm going to give you the history. So that's why I said earlier. So in 2012, when I took over Stormwater, or when we started Stormwater, we had 1.5 horsepower pump in a little pond that was about the size of, it's smaller than, that was the original picture right here. The one with this one here. It looks bigger than what it is, but it was probably, you see, it's only the corner of that original pond. If you look at the second picture right here, you see that little corner? That was the original pond, and we expanded it another 1/4 acre or so. So that bigger pond is 0.35 acres. So it's a little bit over 1/3 of an acre. That ain't cutting it. It ain't cutting it. With the second pond, we put down 2 3.5 horsepower pumps. We put checks in them so we wouldn't have any backflow as well. And it could keep up, but it only on like slow rains. When we had heavy storms, it still couldn't pick up. It couldn't keep up with it. And many times we had to come back in and bring in extra pumps. Like during Florence, we had to bring in another pump to help those pumps run. Matter of fact, I think we had a power loss and we didn't even have electricity to those at the time. So this is all well thought out. I'm going to explain to you what's going to happen next. So we thought about all that. Well, I did anyway. So no, trust me, I have a lot of people to help me. So there's a lot of engineering firms out there that are helping with this project. TRC, Withers and Ravenel, Moffitt and Nickel. So don't get it twisted. We actually have put a lot of R&D into what this system is going to be now. So Withers and Ravenel actually designed this pump station, but we got this new station is going to have three pumps with check valves involved. So no backflow. That's a big thing. You can ask me about that later, but we got two 2.5 horsepower pumps that will do the daily dewatering. So they just keep the water flowing through the wetlands out of the pond, keep the pond at what we call the permanent level. So the permanent level is like, I want to say is -2. So that gives you an idea how close the land is to river level if the pond looks full at a level -2. So we keeping it with these two pumps to keep our pond at a -2 for every day. They'll work unless it's no inflow and it's a dry month or they will run pretty much daily. So when we get a storm, there's one 35 horsepower pump that's going in the center. And if you look at the pictures, that one in the center, that pump should be able to keep up and dewater that pond within, I can't give you a time because we haven't tested it yet, but it will definitely put a dent in it faster than any pumps that we've ever had. A 35 horsepower pump will move, I'm guesstimating, about 3,000 gallons per minute. So we can really put a dent. Yeah, we can, with the three of those together running during a storm, we definitely can keep water levels down in the area and help assist with upland areas with water, because we'll make more space. Retention is the big thing. People don't realize it. You got a pump needs retention, because if you run a pump on you put it in a creek bed and you run it, what do? You run out of water before it can do its job. So retention is a big thing. So with this bigger pond and these pumps, we should actually be able to assist upland areas with drainage. So once it leaves the check valves, it follows down East Rose Street. Everybody knows what East Rose is. So it follows right down the side of the train tracks. And I'm going to tell you the big hurdle with the railroad after I finish this slide here. So where it all ends up is down near, I'm trying to give you a good street. It's not Garden and what's the East Rose intersect. There is what we call a stilling well. What a stilling well does, that's that box in the picture here. You can see where the first picture shows what it looked like before they installed it. And then the second picture shows where it's kind of halfway installed. But what it does, it takes water that's pushed into the box, and now it wells in the box, and gravity slows the water down. So after it's come out of the force main, it's moving at a considerable speed. If we just dumped it into the river or into the creek, it would blow the creek out and basically cause a bunch of erosion and nasty stuff to happen, and sediment and just everything that we don't want. So what this stilling well does is it causes that water to stop. It hits that dead box, and then it rises up. As it rises up, that gravity slows the water down, and then it just trickles out of the box. It runs over a bunch of rocks. The rocks actually create two things. They slow the water down even more, and they quiet the noise of the pump discharging. Because if you ever run your water hose or hold it up and you just let the water run, it's loud. I mean, it would. Could you imagine that coming out of a 12-inch force main? It'd be really loud, and it would be disturbing to the neighborhood. So this not only attenuates the water, but it quiets it down quite a bit. So it trickles off through the rocks and it dumps into the creek right at the edge of. If you've been to East Evergreen Cemetery, it's a pump station down there, and there's a what I'm trying to say, a little culvert they're crossing right there. It'll discharge between the culvert and the train tracks. And once it gets there, it's in the creek. So now we in Jacksonville Creek. It's back to where it's in that part of Jacksonville Creek is really nobody from that point downstream. There's not many homes on that creek. I think it's maybe one guy that lives down at the end of down by the cemetery, and there's a few houses on Noose Avenue that most likely won't be affected by the extra water that's introduced in the thing. So we have eliminated that downstream effect that we had from the original pump station. So that is a plus as well. I'm a big guy about not getting a phone call on a Saturday, so that eliminates the phone calls on the Saturday. So so now that's pretty much the project explained. But this is the hurdle that we spoke of before. So every city that works in a railroad corridor has dealt with the same exact thing. The railroad, their whole goal is to preserve their right-of-ways. And it's legitimate. I understand once it's explained to you, you will understand completely. They have land that they acquired hundreds of years ago. I don't say hundreds, it's not that far apart. But that land is all they'll ever get, because nobody's going to sell land to the railroad because you don't want a train running through your front yard, right? So they are adamant about preserving the right-of-ways that they own. So in that being said, East Rose Street is technically in the railroad right-of-way. So when we put our force main, we went way over to the other side. As far as we could get from the train track, we were still in there right away. So they decided that we were going to have to over-engineer our force main, and it cost us an excess of another $100,000, which is, I mean, in the long run, I understand. But and luckily, this was all grant funded and not a community-based situation. You know, where we had people's tax, well, it's still, I can't say it that way either, but you know what I mean. It was grant money. So the impact was not as bad as it would have been if it had came directly from our general fund or from your money, your taxes. But in the same token, that could have been a little bit easier. And I also put this picture up here for a reason. What y'all notice about the train tracks? Why you think it's green? The phosphorus. The trains drop phosphorus all the way down the tracks. And so you notice it's not outside the tracks, it's right down the center. We had a train the other day, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but we had a train the other day that dumped a substantial amount of corn. Now this is grain down Hancock Street. Somebody in this room probably saw that trail from the trestle all the way down Hancock Street. It was corn. And and we went to the station and said, hey, look, it's not hazardous, but it needs to be cleaned up. They took a leaf blower and blew it off to the side. But I have to understand I'm a big proponent about policing things, but I also understand that these are hard working Americans as well. So we have to cut them a little bit of slack. So I mean, that in a nutshell is my presentation, but I know I didn't answer everybody's questions, so I'm up here now to answer questions. Anything you want, I mean, especially if it's something that I can help you get further grasp, because I'm not the best public speaker in the world. So, what you got?
Okay, I know that you all, wait, before you do that, before you answer your question, ask your question, so that people on the line know that here's a mic.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I know that you all, I could say, almost like doubled upon behind the Duffyfield
Yep.
Head Start. Okay, this time, are you guys going to put a fence around? Because I know one time they said they weren't going to do it because
Yeah, well, the street is going to be gone. So that part that's on that where the curve is and the people go around it, that's all going to be gone. So it really ain't going to be a reason, and it's going to be more of a park. So we want to leave it open for people to enjoy. I don't know if you want to. I don't think they're going to put a fence around it.
okay, you know.
Yeah, but it won't be. The traffic is going to go away, so it won't be the street. Well, you still be able to use East Roads to go up, but Biddle Street and the that section of F is going away, so it won't be that. I know a lot of people would say, well, people fly around this corner, they're gonna fly off in the pond. That's not gonna happen anymore. Yeah, that part's going away.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it may be in the future we may think of something like we had before. Remember we had the rope. The rope. So it's not really offenses. I don't think it would add. It'd be kind of. Yeah, it's not really attractive. I hate that's the best word I could come up with. You know, but we'll definitely put safety in mind. If especially me, because I don't like to clean up behind accidents. You know, cars going off in the pond. I've done that before. Like ambulance got stuck in the pond one time. So I mean, I've done that before as well too. So I don't like cleaning up behind. So if I see a safety issue, I'm gonna do something to try to alleviate it. So we still in the learning process. Once they construct all this stuff and they put it in the city's hand, we are definitely going to find things that need to be improved. So I mean that same thing with Jack Smith Creek wetlands. When they dropped it off in my hands, it was just they were like, okay, just turn the pumps on, and I'm like, well, what about this and what about that? So eventually, I had to improve things as we went along. And if I noticed something or if we notice something that needs to be addressed, we'll take care of it. So I mean, right now, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if has anybody ever ran off in the pond directly? No.
But they never drained it, so we didn't never get a chance to see the bodies.
I drained it almost all the way down the other day. I didn't see anything floating. I'm hoping that let's hope that people that don't happen. So,
And I just want to make a notice of around there on Garden and Main Street, right in the curve.
Mm-hmm.
I know I see you all making like a trailway. Like a pier,
yeah,
good pier.
okay. So that street is that little section is named Sutton Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So with Alderman Best, she wanted to have a sidewalk to go around, but we couldn't obtain enough right of way to make the sidewalk work. So to help out as best we could, we actually cut that path through the woods, and now you'll be able to get to Henderson Park without having to walk to that dangerous part of the street right there. So you should be able to cut that. That's what the point is. So you can get around that way without having to walk around that side of the street with no sidewalk.
Yeah.
So that's it'll be open. I don't know. It matters what the weather is. We hope to get it done by mid-summertime. So.
Yeah, because you need to absorb some of that water, because I went through there when it was raining real hard, and I noticed a whole lot of rain to the bottom of it. So I don't know if you want to
We're
put
going to do something with the edge of the street right there, too, for that drain and all that. Because that drain was put in there probably so long ago that the elevation has changed. So now it don't work anymore. So what they're going to try to do is we're going to try to change it to make it conducive again. That's all part of that whole situation. It'll be a little while, but you'll see it come together.
Okay, this is a question from someone online. How does this system keep New Bern from ever having a flood like 2017? Is there anything the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can do to prevent flooding from destroying so many homes?
Unfortunately, no. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't fix or be prepared and be more resilient. So first I'm going to say no, and I'm going to tell you why. The only way to stop flooding like Florence to ever happen again is to put a big dike around the whole town. And nobody wants to look at that at Union Point Park or at Lawson's Creek Park to see, because that's the only way you're going to stop inflow from the river is to dike it off. Or as people joke me all the time, says pump out the river. Now you know that's not going to happen. So you hear all this resiliency. I know y'all hear about these programs, and what they are trying to do is get us in the mindset to get y'all in the mindset on how to bounce back after a flood. Stuff like, I know you've seen, you probably definitely seen the houses that they raising down on Washington and stuff like that. That's part of the resiliency. You know, it's like, hey, I may not be able to stop a flood, but if I can make my house bomb-proof, so when I come, after the flood, I can come back, open the windows, and it'll dry out quicker. That's the type of stuff we're trying to learn, and we're trying to teach people in the neighborhoods that are most vulnerable. So, because if you live in any place that's above an elevation 10, unless we get something worse than Florida, you probably never see flooding. Unless it's some weird situation. There was some places that got flooded because they were just landlocked into a bowl on high ground. That's happened sometimes as well. And those are unfortunate events. But what I'm talking about is like when the whole town, half of the town, because if you saw the maps during Florence, it was pretty much 50% of New Bern was underwater or either was impacted by water somewhere, shape, or form. And they usually, right now it's I want to say it's an elevation 8 is in flood zone, and then New Bern requires a 2+2 building code. So you have to build to a finished floor elevation of 10, which was that was one of the things we changed after Florence to make it as a resiliency project. So, or a resiliency measure. That's the word I'm looking for. So. But unfortunately, I don't think, I mean, if I had enough money and big enough pumps, but pumps are not the most efficient way to move water. The best way to move water is in a river. So, without dikes and things of that nature, there's no way to fix the problem.
I know New Bern and a lot of places around New Bern have swales. I know some places in Duffyfield, the houses are too close to the road to have a swale, but are there parts of Duffyfield that would benefit from swales?
Yes, but see, one of the biggest problems with that.
By the way, what are swales?
Swales are basically gentle ditches. They're not, the difference between a ditch and a swale is a ditch is somebody came through with a backhoe and scooped out a trench. A swale is a 3-to-1 slope, and sometimes they even wider than that. Some places require 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 slopes. They barely, you can tell that they're barely there, but they are made to convey or be the low point and convey water during storms. But yes, but the one thing about Duffyfield that a lot of people don't realize, and this is a hurdle that we ran into for some other projects that we try to do, or we are trying to do, I should say, is the right-of-ways are, some of the houses, like on Garden Street, per se, did you remember when they did all that surveying on Garden Street, and you saw the little pink flags on the garden? Remember some of them were up on people's porches? That's because the right-of-way is up in people's yards. What they did was they declared, when they declared the right of way years before, way before I was born, and probably in the 60s or 50s, I guess, they declared it here, but they didn't realize that people were going to build in it, or they already had built in it. So a lot of families basically took one house and they made 4 yards in one yard. It's family land. So if I'm gonna give my cousin this house and he can live over here, and then next thing you know, they build a road right through the middle of our yard. And that's basically how it happened. So we looked at putting in green infrastructure, like at the end, if you've been down there, and you know how a lot of the dead end roads ended at the canals. We thought about it because the city right away may be putting some kind of green infrastructure in, like little rain gardens or grass swales or something at the end of these streets. That's another issue, because now we don't have enough land. We need, because it's that those right of ways were not well thought out of. That's the best way I can put it. So, it's always something in place. I mean, we always trying to do something. We're trying to make the canal more nature based and get it away from just being a open cut canal. Maybe put some plants in it, and do some stuff with it that we can. But I definitely, we have a bunch of stuff in play, or looking at stuff to try to make it work. So you just gotta wait and see what we can make work. So
I know this was primarily about Duffyfield, but with all the construction of the impending Interstate 42, there are now all kinds of retention ponds. I guess it's a concern because some of them look pretty full already.
This DOT has a different outlook on how stormwater works. They adhere to the same rules that we do, but they also believe it's more retention until it infiltrates. So you might see a pond over that looks like it's full of water. They planned on it to do that. So it runs off of the highway and it stays in those ponds and until it infiltrates. And sometimes the plan of action is not according to the time. So basically it'll rain again before it can dry. But most of their basins are more or less not retention ponds, they're infiltration basins. So unless they have a definite way of getting water out, they're more or less worried about getting it into a certain spot and letting it infiltrate. So it's a little different method. We have to get water away from people's homes, and the highway is always the high ground, so they're not really worried about flooding. I mean, they have been flooded before, but somebody had made that point to me one time. Said, "You know why they call it the highway, right?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because it's the high ground. It's really, it's." So because I've actually asked that question. I said, "Why y'all don't worry about the water in the ditches on the side of MLK?" And they said, "Well, because they infiltration trenches." And I was like, "Yeah, I never thought of that."
Praise the Lord. Listen, I just like to make an observation, if you don't mind. 86 years ago, we moved on Myrtle Avenue in Duffyfield, and I still live there. And I want you, if you get a break, to come by the land. They're building me a house. Thank the Lord, a house now up there on Sampson Street. But
I know exactly what you're talking
that's
about.
where I live. But if you get a chance, I want you to come by the house one day, and I'll show you the land. The first pump house that was built in Duffyfield was on our land. It's on our land, and I want you to come by. Evidently, they got to have those pipes and things still under there. But this is about 75 years ago.
So you live on the corner of Sampson and
Eubank.
King Street right there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they just now breaking the foundation in your house right there now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll stop by there one day and I'm sorry I didn't bring my business card, but everybody, all you got to do is call the Public Works office and you can find me. And if you got something, if you got something that needs to be addressed, I tell people this all the time. Sometimes I may not, you may not see me, but always look for the repairs to be done. We have a crew of 6 people. It's myself and 5 guys work the field, and we take care of the drainage in the whole city, all the way from here to the end of Carolina Colors, way down there. So we have a large area to fill. And a lot of times I try to get my field supervisors to make phone calls, call people, say, hey, look, we're going to be here this day or whatever. Sometimes they don't have time to do that. They'll go out there and fix the problem. And I have gotten phone calls and said, well, you never showed up. And I'm like, did you look out in the backyard and see if you saw what we did? It's just an inherent nature of the beast, I guess, as you say.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, and I know you were talking about how when you put the flies down and stuff, but now I notice when they do tear the house down, like they did my mother's, when they built it back up, they pushed it farther back. So they are taking in consideration that.
Yeah, because now they realize.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, and the bad part about it is it was nobody's fault. At the time when they drew those right of ways, or they really just followed roads that were there. So I think I've talked to somebody else in the neighborhood that said the exact same thing. Said when Duffyfield, before they paved the roads, it was just the dirt roads.
Right.
And when they paved the road, they just followed the dirt roads through, but they didn't follow what the existing right of way was and threw people off. It's a lot. It's crazy how close some of it to people's homes. I can't believe it.
Oh, okay. We still got some questions.
Just, do you have a timeline when the fountain might be installed?
The fountain is part of the phase 1 project, which will be when they complete the pump station. So the pump station, right now we on a 3-week hiatus because we had waiting for parts. So I want to say probably by the time they get everything installed, hopefully we can get a operating pump station in August, September. So once we get that done, that's part of that too. They'll install a fountain. It'll be like a tethered floating pump thing. The best way I can describe it is to show you on a set of plans. I'm not good at articulating that type of stuff, but yeah, it'll definitely be nice. Yeah, and I'm hoping, I'm hoping we don't have any learning curves, because like I said before, we get that green hair like algae, and sometimes that I had fountains out there before that causes the issue. So we'll see how that learning curve. We may have to make something to keep it from collecting right against the fountain itself. Trust me, I learned, it was a lot of stuff I had to learn about that area, and from now to then, from then to now. I know that intimately. A lot of people don't realize that I'm out there standing around in the rain in the middle of the night. And and I show up at times when people don't. I'm probably that guy that you spoke to in the dark that you didn't realize that's who it was.
Hi, I got confused by your answer. This whole project, is the intention of this project to stop some of the flooding that happens in
And when I
Duffyfield?
say flooding, we got, and I'm glad you said that. So there's two types of flooding in New Bern and in the world. There is flooding, Florence flooding, and then there's nuisance flooding. Nuisance flooding is that Sunday afternoon storm that floods the street, and then we can't get it out fast enough because the system, it just can't handle it. What we trying to fight is the nuisance flooding. That affects the neighborhood way more than it does.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I meant to say that, and I'm glad you said, I really am glad you said that, because I meant to put that in my presentation and I forgot. Nuisance flooding now, and I ask people all the time, I'm say, well, I got a 30-minute rule. So if you call me during a rain event and the street is full of water, but we just got, I look at rainfall as in a rate. So to give you an analogy, 6 inches of rain in 1 hour is a 1,000-year storm. So if you think you got 6 inches of rain in 1 hour, you need to wait and let the system catch up, because that's way farther than we designed. We designed our stormwater system's max design in this, and I'll tell you why. After it's a 10-year storm over 24 hours, which is 1.5 inches or 2.5 inches. So I got to look at my chart. It's something within that realm over 24-hour period. When we get an intensity that's you getting that number in an hour, that changes the year of the storm. So if you multiply by 10, that's the 100. It's 100,000, and I don't think they go past 1,000-year storm. I have to look at the chart, but I don't think that's like crazy. So sometimes it's just a patience game. If it's coming in your house, call me. Definitely, we'll figure something out. Maybe it's something I don't know. But usually out of Sunday afternoon thunderstorm, we shouldn't see water coming in people's houses. If we do, we got a problem. We got something else going on.
And I know you're not here to talk about.
I'm here to talk.
Okay. What about the waterfront at Union Point Park? That, a heart will cause that to flood the,
We have we have an implementation that is in there, but we haven't really found a time to use it yet. A lot of times Union Point Park floods because of the direction of the wind. The wind will push water in, but we have a check valve that we put in if you've been to the park in the last year, you probably seen me going like this in the dirt. It's in the ground, there's a valve. And if we know that the wind is going to change, say it's an event, especially the MS bike ride, every year gets me. So bike ride comes, I go close the valve. Now we don't have that backflow. The rain itself may rain, and now we have to deal with the rain that hits the ground. There's a pump down there too that'll try to keep up with it. It's because of the size of the depth we couldn't get, but so big of a pump in there. But hopefully when we get the chance to try it, it'll work properly. I mean, it's still an experiment. Anything that we do when it comes to like that, the older infrastructure is more experimental than it is. We can design stuff for big projects when it's something small that you can change this, but you can't change everything upstream. It's kind of you really just only experiment with that one spot, that one little area. And in Union Point Park, I don't know if y'all remember, about 2 years ago, we put new pipes all through the park too as well to help the drainage. So everything from where it intersects with East Front Street, around the bathroom, well, not around the bathroom, at the bathroom, and then across the park, all that's new pipe. It's bigger pipe. I'm going to tell you, and this is why people probably don't realize that it flooded. It was 4-inch garden, like stuff you put on your gutter. That was the drainage inside of Union Point Park. We improved it. It was just, it was put in. It was what it was. I don't know where it came from, how I got in there, but it's what it was.
And what about the waterfront along Trent, the housing project there that's going to
I'm
come
not sure
down?
what they're gonna do with that. I mean, that's a good spot. You know, I've proposed it to use some of that for living shoreline area right there. But that was just something I threw out to a college, because colleges like NC State and UNC will approach you and ask you what, you know, if they have grant money, is it a place I can go to do something? And I threw that out there. I was like, that's a perfect place that you can get it's good, easy access to it. So, but I never heard anything else about it. But the best thing that you can do for that is if they build back in that area to build up higher and then have some way to attenuate wave action and water. Morehead City is a good example. Is Morehead? Or is it, what's the other town that's right on it?
Beaufort.
Yeah, it might be Beaufort. One of them places I drive through all the time, they got these rock jetties that they put along the edge of the road, and they wave attenuators. Those wave attenuators slow wave action down from washing out the road and washing up on the thing. It's stuff like that we can do that would help. I'm trying to get a good way to get this so it's understandable. We are more affected by small events than we are big events. So if we can help with small events more often, a lot of the nuisance that we get and the bothersome things that we see in our environment will go away. So that's the kind of what I call setting a bar. So I know that if I live on, I'm trying to think of a good street, Harbor Drive. Harbor Drive is a good street. Harbor Drive is like elevation 2. They live on the water, but they got houses that are up off the ground. If I live on Harbor Drive, I know that the bar is 2 foot. You know, when the river gets at a 4, they add a 2, and it gets to a 4, it's 2 foot of water all the way around me. But I know that already. So if you set a bar for yourself mentally, you can kind of say, hey, I'm gonna be all right until we get to this point. And that's also a good way to look at mitigation and kind of slowing the water down. If you got to realize that eventually you're going to cross that bar that you can't, there's nothing you can do there except for be resilient minded and just be prepared to move and come back after the fact. So that's all of it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry about the not keeping my groove with my PowerPoint, but y'all got the point. I put it together kind of to remind me, and maybe so if you were more visual reader, but I like to talk anyway. I'd rather say it than show it. So.
And I know you like to give tours.
Okay.
So in the future, what would be a good time to have tour of the Duffyfield project?
I'm gonna tell you, the best time for tours is in the spring. Summertime, everything loses all its flowers and it's just all tall grass. And you got to fight with certain animals, snakes and things that you want. Springtime, well, the wetlands, if it's functioning properly, we don't have that. It's not that bad with mosquitoes, but we can't. It's not if you got dragonflies flying over your head, you're good. You don't see no dragonflies, you might not want to go out there. Probably so. But the springtime, you can see the blooms, and you can see a lot of the tall stuff is dead, and then you can see all the stuff in its infancy coming up, and that's the best time. And I love to give tours of the wetlands. That's my spot.
Yeah. We know that. The other thing, have you thought about doing this presentation in Duffyfield?
Yeah, we tried once, and it was at not at Stanley White. What's the other one?
Omega Center?
The Omega Center, yeah. And they did they didn't do my presentation. They did was it Moffitt and Nickel? You went to that one, right? Yeah, because I remember seeing you over there. It was Moffitt and Nickel did one basically explaining not really this one, but more of a resiliency broad spectrum for the whole neighborhood. And it's some stuff going on that like Henderson Park. They're going to do some things for Henderson Park right now. It may look bad because they putting dirt out there and stuff, but the dirt is out there for a reason. They're trying to make it raise the elevation for the fields and all that stuff. So yeah, I would give this presentation again, and I will definitely be open for tours. So y'all.
Well, no more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did come up here so they can see. You did a very good job.
Thank you.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. Yeah, that was,
And I would, just want to tell people again that if you like what we do, please donate, because that's the only way we get our funding. So, thank you all.
y'all have a good evening.